Okay, so here we are again with another video. This is part 3 of what might be 3 or 4 videos. The last one I was just working on. The last 2 videos I was coming up to this point with like sketches, and well, they're not very long videos, like 20 minutes a piece. I was just talking a lot about values and stuff like that. So what I kept saying in previous videos that I'll do now, so if you were following the whole thing, is that here is the original painting. This oil painting up in the Met in Manhattan, the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I guess they just call it the Met, MET. And it's called Joan of Arc. This painting, and it was made by Jules Bastien Lepage in the 1800s. And to put some perspective on that, I did some research that was after photography had been invented, although I don't think it was a household item at all by far to have a camera. And it was I guess early 1800s. They had like 1820 is when the first photo was done, and even back then you had to stand still for however many seconds, like 20 seconds or something, or even longer, to get an exposure for just a black and white. And then the first color photography started coming around in the 1850s. This was made after that, about 1870. So it's not that old of a painting. We're not talking like Renaissance era. However, it is hand done, and it is, you know, oil done with paints and stuff. There's no photography involved. I was curious as to whether or not he would have access to a color photo, which would allow him to, just spend all this time and work on that detail. Because obviously, standing outside at a live scene or getting someone to stand that still to paint them so realistically would take a long, long time. Um, I don't know how he achieved such realism, but when you go to the Met and see this painting in person, it's just unbelievable. It looks like there's a human being there in front of you, and then it blends off into this outer area where, if I can get my marker out here, she's here, and then in these outer areas, like all around here, it's sort of it does get a little painterly. And you can see some painterly style and stuff around here, but this particular, her, the focal point of this painting is just unbelievably realistic. You can see the veins in her arms and everything when you look at it in person. And there's some weird spiritual stuff going on back here. There's like a saint or a ghost and some angels who are like blending into the scene, which makes it really interesting and creative. So that's that painting. The important point of it was the way she's looking off into the distance and she's holding something, and that always that pose, and because it's Joan of Arc, so you know that this is when she was young before she set off to war or anything, and she was going, getting inspired. It was the moment of divine inspiration, which was important. So this is Jules Bastien Lepage or Lepage, however you pronounce French, and this is the link just to give credit from the Met Museum where you can go and see that painting yourself if you want to, or just Google search for Joan of Arc painting and go to the first link that says metmuseum.org should be the one. And that's that. So if you're following the series here, then you already know what I have here is this painting basically. Um, I want to go into color with it. I want to keep the foreground separate, and all the stuff that I have here, I want to try and color it. So the only thing I added between this video and the last, which I might add in a time lapse quickly, or it's really insignificant, but it's just this. I just added some more tree over here. It looks like it's in the background a bit under the shade, and then all these leaves and stuff coming off the wind. I felt just gave it more energy and also added to the foreground. So that's that. Into this sketch. Now what we do, if you're doing, this is exclusively for digital painting, this effect. I'll add a layer here. Actually, I already had another layer. We'll call this one color. I already have another one called color. I'll call it color 2. And if I start coloring under that layer, let me choose a color. First of all, I'm going to get some green out here. Now, if I were to start coloring on this layer, and you see it's only showing up in the background under that layer. But if I go up to the sketch layer where I did all that drawing and change the mode into multiply, then that's the trick. Now you can see it everywhere that I sketch, it shows up. However, there was an effect here when I did that, and I don't know why this is exactly, but it got darker. And I don't want that to happen really. I think the reason for that is because there's a gray background. So if I make this color white, if I fill this in, fill whole selection, right? Yeah, right. So now it's a little whiter. So is that exactly the same as it was before though? So let me turn this off. This has to, right, yeah, and then put this back to normal. See, it's hard to compare after doing all that. I put this on, right. Okay, here's what we can do. I can leave that on, and while I'm on this sketch layer, change this to multiply and see if it changes. No, it did not change. Okay, so that's a workable solution. And then later on, I'll just take away this layer when I want to get back to that, because you see I have the gradient for from the sky to there. Okay, so now I can go to this white canvas that I have and start coloring in there. And if you see what it does, it just adds the color behind the value. And if there's only a few points that I get across in this video, because I don't want to ramble on for an hour, this is one of the most important ones. That first of all, what we're doing when we put the layer in multiply mode like that is we're allowing the values to come through to the next layer. So, I mean, a long story short, look at what happened there. A more obvious example will be, let me grab a brown here for the tree, and we'll see what happens. And watch when I color here in the tree. Notice while I'm coloring it, the whites are still staying light, and the dark parts are still staying dark, right? So it's almost like I'm coloring transparently over these values. And you couldn't do that. I mean, well, if you can do that, you tell me how on traditional medium, if you're using like a pen or paints or pens or markers or anything. Maybe with marker you could do it, but then how would you make that under layer, that first value layer? How would you do that? I just don't know. So I do believe this is something that's unique, and I can switch back and forth to the different colors just by selecting it very quickly without interference from the above layer. So it's just it's a very handy thing to have, yeah. Um, so that works fine. And then since I can do that, that's one thing that's important to note. Another is that this isn't exactly, it's not coming out exactly how I want it, the way that I did it, with values and tones and all that in mind. And what I mean by that is that this foreground here, for example, it shouldn't really be darker than the background layers. It should just have more value. So that can mean a couple of things. One is that I go back to the sketch layer and choose a white here. And let's draw some grass. This should be like lighter, right? So I'm back on the value layer now. So that's not even white enough. It should be like this, yeah. So this should be very strong, very bright green coming out here where the sun is reflecting on her. And I'm just going to do that much right there. That's just to give you a small example of what I'm talking about, so that you'll have stronger, lighter lights and darker darks. But it doesn't necessarily mean, that everything should be the same value. It's just that when it's light, the light should be stronger because it's closer to reflecting against the sun, and when it's dark, it should be darker. Whereas the further away stuff just kind of goes way into the mist. So even just by doing this here, you can already see I've pushed the background back really, really far because this bright white is coming out very strong as being clear and near to us. If there's something that's far away back here, it should never be that bright. It should be kind of like off in the mist, right? Unless it was just some extremely weird, super strong light, it would be like alien. So now I'll go back to the color layer. Using that same green, I make the brush really, really big. And I can use that same green for a lot of these areas here as we're not too far off in the distance. If you watched the previous videos, these parts were like about where I'm coloring right now would be like a two-story building could fit there from ground to sky, you know, like from here to there. And this pillar back here is about 3 or 4 stories high. So we're not that far off to the distance. However, even though that's true, I still want to get lighter as I go off, and I want to get a little bit, whoops, I want to get a little bit bluer too. Because if I were to use the same shade of green all the way back, it's although it's using the how do you say the perspective, the value perspective, it's not using color perspective because it is getting lighter and lighter. That's true, but it's not losing its color as it goes into the distance, which should happen. All things, whoops, that's not what I meant to do. All things on a perfectly blue day, perfectly blue sky, on a sunny day and all that should kind of taper off into blueness or grayness. And don't quote me on that perfectly or anything. It's just that's what happens. So here's the green. Notice how the green on this color wheel, it's kind of right next to the blue. So since we're using green, we can slide it towards the blue a little bit to have a blue-green, and that would be a good color for these more distant mountains. Although I need it to be a bit whiter. That'll work. So that's like, there's 2 or 3 things I just want to make note of in this video, and that would be the extent of my knowledge on color too. Like something I should probably uh, be, how to say, make very publicly known out in the open here is that I'm not at all any type of master of color or a master of anything, but I'm a lot better at sketching and other things than I am at color. There's just something I'm still, don't want to say I'm still learning myself. I know how I like to do it and how I get it done, and I know my own tricks. Um, but there's some people out there who just blow me away with their ability to do to master color, and that was actually some of my inspiration for doing this. Is sometimes just looking at what other people have done, and blows my mind, and then it makes me want to go try it. So, okay, see it fading off into the blue, and that makes it look Earthling. If you wanted to be on Mars or something, you could have it fade off into the red, or another planet, you could have it fade off into, whatever color you think the sky happens to be there. And even to think of things like that, it's kind of interesting, right? So there, again, we're using, at this point, we're using like 3 or 4 methods of showing depth. One is the color is changing as it goes off into the distance there. Another is that the perspective of things is getting smaller. The size of things and shapes, sizes and shapes get smaller. And another is the values, right? So values, which is associated to color, but it's different, right? The color is color. It's either green or it's blue, and values are values. Values means it's lighter, the amount, the intensity of light and darkness, right? So as we come up closer in this area up front, we have very intense lights and intense darks, and then back here it's just kind of like hazy lights and hazy darks. So it's a lot more intense. Uh, that's basically a good way to summarize that. Actually, I should probably you can quote me on that one. Give me some credit. Uh, Deserve some credit every once in a while. Don't get enough probably. So I'll make these things some kind of color. Let's also think about, or maybe I'll just leave them gray. Maybe gray is the color for these, just like that. Yeah. And that one is already, they're already at the proper values they should be. So they could, you might think that they're white or something. White could be, the color. And that is, I guess, the color they would be if they're white, just like that. I'll think about it. Maybe later I'll add color to them. This one's lighter than that one, so it should show the depth there. And then so that was just a couple of things. And then a last thing, that's all just general perspective coloring and shading and stuff. But one last thing that this is where I'm really going to start learning myself, and I might even go in the time lapse and just see, go into deep thought and see if I can figure it out myself, is how to get these, the main subject here, colors for the focal piece, which is this girl here, how to get these colors really realistic. Well, I know one thing to do is that we're not going to choose this kind of red, right? We're not going to go in like this because that's just, well, obvious. Even Disney wouldn't use that, right? That's just like way too red. Now, if you're trying to be artsy, you can do this, and that way, it's kind of cool. It is kind of interesting, right? Even if you look from far, far away, that red will just scream out at you, so it would kind of make a point. But I'm going for realistic. So one thing we're going to do going for realistic when you're looking at your color wheel is you don't choose from this area all the way up where it's most intense. And obviously you don't want to choose all the way, black or all the way white because there's no color. Maybe somewhere in the middle, right? But if you're choosing in the middle, let's just see what happens. It's kind of dark. See how that's kind of dark? I guess if it was a dark color. And also it still seems kind of I want to say Disney, right? It's just this really sharp, vivid color. It doesn't look realistic. So what I'm choosing to do, and I could be right, it could be wrong, I don't know, is I'm going to the lightest area, and I'm choosing not intense, but very, very weak amount of color, just a little bit of color. So for this is supposed to be red, I'm actually using pink, right? I'm not using some kind of really sharp dark red. And then if she has blue shirt on, which I haven't thought about this, I don't even know. Maybe purple. Let me see what happens. Maybe she has a purple shirt on for all I know. We can have a try at that. Yeah. Okay. And then, just like that, very light purple. And this kind of works. At least I know it still looks a little bit Disney, but it's a lot better than, the other hyper Disney where you don't want to go into that super intense area. That's just not good. Coming back a little bit into the gray area can also be useful to tone it down a bit. Yeah, see, I like that better because the previous one was a little, yeah, it was a little sharp. Another thing I know for skin color is get out a color picker, go into Google, and just look up any human being, whatever skin color they are, and notice when the color picker picks that person, notice what color comes out. And the odd thing is, it's like red, a little bit close to orange, but people are red. You don't want to believe it? That's fine. Don't. You don't have to. You can just keep doing what you do. But whether they be black or white, the difference with the skin pigment, if it's a dark skinned person, such as of African descent, sort of darkness, then it would just be closer to the black that has more skin pigmentation, I guess what they call it. I don't know. And now when you go into this color mode, I have to go back and question all of the colors that I was using previously. Is this gray right here, where I think it should be like her stomach should be showing up here? Why is that black? Oh, I'm on the wrong layer. Yeah. This area here, maybe it should be oh, not that one. Oh, I do want to be on this, right, with a white color, right. Ah, keep doing that wrong. So I want to be on the value layer, right, which is this one, and with the white color, right. So now I can put white on here. I kind of want, right, if that's her stomach is showing as I'm thinking it is, I kind of want that to all be, exposed like that, not like super um dark like it is now, unless there's some shadow going in there. So I have to think about that. And that's, again, that's another great thing about this separating the values from the color layer is that I can go back and do that. Let me just show that again real quick. It's like here, if I turn off the value, there's the color I've colored so far. And I'll put my values back on, and then I can turn off the color if I want and go back to that original black and white. So you have your colors and your values separated. That's really, really awesome. Try doing that with oil painting or anything, and you'll be sadly disappointed because it's impossible. Um, and also just try doing any painting with oil painting, and then compare the difficulty of that to what I'm doing here, and it's just an amazing contrast and difficulty levels, very, very different. Um, because you have to plan all of this ahead, all the values, the amount of intensity of light you're going to use, and the colors you're going to use have to be planned out ahead, or basically you just have to use your eye and keep doing it over and over and over until it becomes natural, and that's not easy at all. So yeah, I use slightly different shade of green, or I should say, you know, as we're getting more educated here, I'm not sure if the word shade of green is even, because a lot of these words that we use in art are they're old and before the times when people even understood how things worked in art, and so they're technically speaking bad words that need to be put into the trash can, and they're also very ambiguous and misleading and confusing because people just didn't know what, it's not like a science. Art doesn't have the word science stapled to it. It's just two completely different things. And so what did we have with like the Renaissance era? People just, I guess they had to make up words to describe these things. I'm just throwing that green down there to suggest that those will be leaves that I'm going to go into more detail with later. I might even merge these layers, the uh, the value layer and the other later on. What I plan to do, whoops, let me get to color layer. Yep. Oh yeah, because these, where is that foreground? Foreground's up here. Okay. So the foreground, I guess I'm going to leave it how it is for now because I left on a separate layer, which is a good thing. That way I can play with it later and do different tricks, special effects and stuff. Yeah, my goal for now is to just those few things. My goal with this particular phase of this painting, it's like a four-phase thing, I guess. I did the first sketch layer. I got all the perspective ready. Then I got all my values down how I want them. I kind of did that, both of those at the same time. Might have even done it backwards. So it should have been the other order, but whatever. So, um, and now that we're moving into color, the first phase I want to do is just lay out all my colors, see which colors I'm going to use where. For example, the green I just used for this tree, I could decide to change that right now if I think it doesn't work. I happen to think it works, and so I'm going to leave it. I might experiment with it, might not. For the moment, I think it's okay. And then the bark of the tree and her colors for her dress and everything. I'm just trying to see what colors work for me and which ones don't, to play around with them a bit. And then the next phase, which, because I'm going to wrap this one up here, the next phase is going to be going into detail with the color, at which point I might merge these layers. And I'll also have to start working out at this point whether or not I have all my values finalized exactly where I want them. Just like I was saying with this part of like her stomach and stuff there, whether or not that was correct. Can't say for sure until you actually get that color in there because it just changes everything. So I mean, even this is pretty cool painting, right? At this point, it's primitive, it's simple, but if you look at it from a distance, kind of blur your eyes, it has a lot of depth to it, and it's a little colorful, and it has a little bit of meaning. Good use of the foreground and the background, so it has some depth. If I could just make that sky blue right now, it might even be really cool. But let me see if I take this out. Yeah, how could I, technically speaking, I could do that now. I'm not going to. I'm just, yeah, I just want to make sure that my theory works real quick. Yeah, that's how that is. Okay. So, anyway, yeah, we'll do that in the next video. And hope you enjoyed this one. Just one more. We'll finish off, and it'll probably be a lot of time lapse. I might have some time lapse coming after this or early in the next one. And don't forget to keep drawing. Have fun.